And then there's also this notion of leading by example that I think is so important. And there's a really interesting body of neuroscience on why leadership is so important. And it has to do with mirror neurons. It has to do with how people look to their leader and actually try to be like their leader. So if you have a team captain who works hard during every drill and practice, who's at the rink early to warm up, who stays late to study film or work on other skills or work in the weight room, that inspires other members of the team to do the same sort of thing. If you have a captain who's lazy, who complains, that sets the tone for other players on the team to do the same thing. I'm Garrett Salpeter, and I believe that the most powerful and transformative way to help people recover from pain and injury, heal from trauma, and reach their highest levels of fitness and performance is to focus on the nervous system. In this podcast, we'll share knowledge from the frontiers of neuroscience and inspirational stories of how applying that knowledge has empowered people from all walks of life to heal, adapt, and grow. Hello, NeuFit Nation. I'm going to start today with a question for you. When you are going through difficult times, challenging circumstances, how do you coach yourself? What's that internal dialogue like? For me, one of the most helpful paradigms is to actually reflect back on lessons that I learned as an athlete, lessons I learned playing sports. And that has helped me get through many different difficulties and has really been a powerful paradigm that's helped me so much. And so I wanted to do a shorter solo episode today to share with you some of those thoughts in the hope that they will be helpful for you as well. So first, I want to start with a more existential question, which is, what's my North Star? How do I define success? I'll ask you the same thing. How do you define success? There's a, sort of, especially within entrepreneurs like us, if you're a practice owner, if you have your own business, this sense of we always need to be achieving, we always need more, looking at external trappings of success sometimes or external validation indicators, things like that. And one of the things that I really like to come back to is the example of John Wooden. John Wooden was the UCLA basketball coach who won a whole series of national championships in the 1960s and 1970s, had a dynasty there, and he was famous for his philosophy, for his approach to coaching, to life, leadership. And one of his favorite quotes that I really remind myself of over and over again is his definition of success. So he defines success as the peace of mind from knowing that you did the best of which you are capable. And if you've truly done your best, you can call yourself a success. You can have the peace of mind of knowing that you gave it your all, regardless of the outcome. And another of his points that I really take to heart is that the outcome is not the main product, but it's a byproduct. It's the effort. It's the journey along the way. It's me knowing that I gave my best. And it also plays into that notion of focusing only on what I can control and letting other things that I can't control, letting them be, letting them take care of themselves, letting them happen, play out however they will. And that really is helpful for me. And I know that's a guiding principle, a core precept that whenever there's something going on, first of all, distinguishing what it is that I can control versus what I can't control. And then knowing that all I can do is give it my best. And if I do, I'll be a success. And that does give a good sense of self-satisfaction there. So I really like that. In this foundational topic of defining success and some of the mindset here related to sports, there's another element to this that's related. And for me, that comes from my experience as a hockey player and this notion of really going all in. When I wanted to be a hockey player, when I wanted to play in college or play professionally, I, did everything that I could. And the question now of how this translates to business. So I learned what it means to really give it my all, to give something my all, to not take no for an answer. If I don't know something, to be resourceful and figure it out. And there were times where I was slower on the ice. I was lacking skills. I was never at risk of making the NHL. So I had some of these problems throughout. But when I identified these problems, I had such a drive within me that I didn't want to just accept it, that I wanted to figure out how to find the right coach, or read a book on training, or read a book on hockey skills, or I had these old DVDs from a Russian hockey coach that actually, there were VHS tapes back in the day. And I would find ways to get on the ice early in the morning before the figure skaters at my local rink in the summer, so I could go practice these things. And just really, really having that determination, going all in, caring so much. Now it didn't get me to the NHL, but along the way, learning what it really feels like and what it really means to devote myself to something definitely helps in any other pursuit in life. And it's sort of like, you hear these stories of Kobe Bryant when he was playing basketball. He would get an extra training session in every day. He'd start at 4 or 5 a.m., get his first session, recover, do another skill session on the court or a workout, do another one. And he talks about how his additional session every day would compound over years and years and years, and allow him to get that much further ahead of everybody else, because he was simply doing more than they were. And so I think, these disciplines, this approach can translate to any other areas of life. Another really valuable lesson that I learned, so thinking about success there is more sort of existential, foundational mindset. There's other than things along the way, like how to handle adversity, handling setbacks. So first of all, I think it's helpful, for us as a team, if we have a losing month, if our sales are down or we don't hit our numbers, to understand that, look, it's like we're playing a long season, and every team that goes on to win a championship, they still lose games during the season, I guess, except for maybe the 1972 Miami Dolphins. But it's possible to lose a game, learn from it, adjust. And so that's the thing where adversity can be an asset. That's another John Wooden saying. Adversity is your asset, because if you lose, or if you don't hit your goal, you can look back at that and you can say, okay, what could I have done better? Each person, what process-wise could we have done better? Strategy-wise, execution-wise, personnel-wise, could we have done better? And we can learn from that. And so I think back to a time when I did not make the hockey team that I really, really, really wanted to make. My initial reaction, honestly, and this is, not excellent, but my first reaction was blame. It's politics, or this was in junior high. It's like, oh, the other parents, knew the coaches better, or stuff like that. And then I with some guidance from my own parents and sort of reflecting on it, I realized, that might be the case, but all I can control is my own performance on the ice. And so I started, putting in the extra effort. That was a real big motivator for me, and it got me working harder than I ever otherwise would have. And I ended up, for example, getting a bucket of 50 hockey pucks and shooting pucks in my driveway. I'd shoot 50 pucks, go collect them all, fill up the bucket, shoot them again, and I ended up over that year shooting 75,000 pucks. And my shot got a lot better. And, just incrementally along the way, I kept getting better and better and better. And that, was a very good learning experience, and how to handle losses, how to handle adversity, how to handle setbacks. I think that's something that's very important for us, whether it's, losing an account or not getting a sale, not hitting numbers for a month or a quarter. It's having the resilience to come back and be able to learn from it and do better next time. Another category of lessons that I learned from sports is the power of teamwork. So quoting John Wooden again, he says that it takes 10 hands to score a basket. So even if someone isn't touching the ball, at least a defender on the opposing team has to pay attention to them, because if there's one player trying to score against all 5 of the other team's players, they're not going to be able to do it. So everyone has a role, even if the person doesn't touch the ball on that play or whatever it might be. Just like on a team in business, if you have a clinic, for example, there's got to be someone who's the face of the company. If you're out giving talks or doing things in the community, And then there have to be people behind the scenes who are don't necessarily interact with outside people, with outside customers, or at least interact as frequently or in that way. There's have to be people who deliver the services, or in our case, pack up devices and send them. There has to be people who look at quality control and safety. Sometimes in a small business, these are all the same person, right? I remember the early days in my own business of wearing every hat, scheduling sessions, accepting payments, and working with people, that sort of thing, or even packing up newbies myself in the early days of having our device out there. But it really does take everyone. Everyone has a role, and it's important that everybody contributes. It's important that everyone understands on the team how their role contributes to the overall success of the team. And so, my time playing hockey, there's defense, there's offense. There's people who are on the first line. There's people who are on the third line, getting more or less playing time. There's people who have to go out on the power play to try to score goals, and on the penalty kill to try to stop the other team from scoring goals. And there's a goalie also, right? So there's all these roles, and everyone has to be making their contribution, and everyone's contribution matters. The equipment manager who's sharpening skates, their contribution matters. The coaching staff, everyone's contribution matters. And there's a really good image that I like here that really has stuck with me. A mentor showed me this once, where there's this image of, imagine you have a hot tub, a whirlpool, and you can turn the jets so they're pointing in different directions. If you point all the jets in the same direction, so you have 10 jets and you turn them all so they're pointing such that they send the water clockwise, you can actually get the water flowing around pretty fast in a loop, in a circle, so that when you have if you put a tennis ball or a ping pong ball on the surface of the water, it can go around. And it can go around in maybe 15 seconds. You can make a loop around that whirlpool. And there's a great metaphor here. So that's 15 seconds when everyone's pointing in the same direction, everyone's aligned. Now, if there's 10 jets and you take just one of them and point it the opposite direction, counterclockwise, so you have 9 going one direction and just one going the other way. You might think, okay, that's going to be a 10% difference. Now it's going to take, it was 15 seconds before, it's going to take 18 or 20 seconds now, maybe, or even, maybe 16, 17 seconds for that ball to get around, right? Because it's just one person's off. No, it's way more profound than that. It's going to go from 15 seconds to 50 seconds. It's going to make a huge difference. Having one jet pointed in the opposite direction can ruin the entire dynamic of a team. And so it's vitally important that everyone is rowing in the same direction, that if there's any influences, any people that are creating a toxic culture or are subverting the overall mission, it's vitally important that you either help them change their behavior or ask them to leave and find another job, because that is can be very bad. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way several years ago. I'm grateful to say we have a great culture and everything now, but that can be very problematic. And John Wooden also, keep going back to his example, he was famous for sitting out some of his quote unquote best players, the most talented, the most skilled players, if they were being selfish, if they were putting their own interests above those of the team. And what that led to was the person either, leaving if they wouldn't change their attitude, and that was best for the team, or if they would learn to start putting the team first, start, passing and running plays instead of shooting and trying to be the star, or whatever it might be. If they would do that, and he has several examples of players who went on to the NBA and, helped their UCLA teams win championships, because when they put the team first, everyone did better. It made a huge positive difference. Also, in John Wooden's example, in terms of the culture and that element of teamwork there, he talks a lot about the importance of character, and he defines character. I think it's worth talking about this for a moment. He defines character as having 3 things: respect for self, respect for others, and respect for the game. So thank you so much for listening to the Undercurrent podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how NeuFit and the Newbie can impact your life, please visit our website at www.neu.fit. That's NEU.FIT. So you can learn more about how it might integrate into your professional practice, how you can use it as a patient, and you can also connect with our team there. First of all, why is that important? Well, if you have character and values, you're going to attract people who share those same values, and hopefully repel, right, or at least not attract people who don't, right? And so, if you have, drilling into this a little deeper, if you have respect for yourself, that means that you believe you are worth putting in the effort, that you have potential, that you can improve, and you are willing to invest to build up your skills, to work on your mindset, to do what it takes because you know that you are worth it. Respect for others means that you treat them like human beings. You treat them how you want to be treated, or even better, you treat them how they want to be treated so that they can thrive in their role. And then respect for the game means that you're doing things the right way generally. It's not about cheating, taking shortcuts. It's doing things the right way. And that helps to foster the type of culture that I know we want to have at NeuFit, that I imagine you want to have in your practice or your business. And the culture that he had there at UCLA just was famous, and the way that he instilled that in all of his players is really wonderful. So one book of John Wooden's is called On Leadership, and I would highly recommend that. We'll talk a little bit more about leadership a little later on here. One final thing in terms of teamwork that I want to mention is actually, I guess, two things. One is that the best teams I've been on in sports and in business are the ones where people really care about each other, and you can't fake that. So there's something to be said for that feeling that you're in the trenches, that you're going through it together, that you're bonding through adversity. It's really, there's really a lot to that. So finding ways to do things outside of work and get to know each other and connect and actually build relationships, I think is very important. That helped us in sports teams I've been on, certainly helps in business. And then also, the idea of if someone leaves or someone takes another job or goes on maternity leave or something like that, there's this notion in sports of, okay, it's next man up or next woman up. Knowing that the team is stronger than any one individual gives a sense of resilience, so that people on the team feel confident that that they don't think, oh my gosh, we just lost this player, we're in deep trouble. It's like, okay, you know what? The team is resilient. The team can do this. We can do this collectively here. Even if one person can't fill that person's shoes because they were a star, a few of us can contribute in ways that will fill the hole left by that person. So there's some really good teamwork dynamics that translate well to the business world, as I think do the thoughts that I have around competition. I think that is really important. So if you have a clinic and someone else is coming in and marketing in your city or trying to take your patients, there's one way to look at that. There's sort of a scarcity mindset way to look at that, which is, oh my gosh, they're coming for me. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, and they're gonna probably chip away at my patients, and this is gonna be bad, right? My business is gonna start to shrink. Or there's a notion of using competition as fuel to improve. It's like, okay, someone else is here. I'm not necessarily trying to beat them, but I am going to use the presence of a competitor as fuel to try to make myself better. And that is a very constructive way to use competition. So using that as fuel to look inside and say, okay, how can I improve my marketing? How can I improve my sales process? How can I improve my delivery? How can I improve my retention and engagement once patients or clients are working with me? And using that as fuel to be better, because it's never about the other team. It's never about the other players. It's about how that competition is fuel for you to be able to improve yourself and your game. And there's a couple other parts to this competitive dynamic that I think are useful. One is, we always want to have humility and respect for a competitor. We never want to get complacent and assume that we're just going to win by showing up, right? That's another reason that having competition can be motivating. Another is this experience. I'll tell you the story and then we can get the principle out of that. But I remember a couple of times when I was playing hockey growing up, especially in junior high and high school, where opposing player would hit me with a cross check, where you take your stick in both hands and use it to like you're pressing into somebody, or slashing, using the stick like an axe, trying to hit somebody. So there's times where I had some cheap shots against me, and there were, there's this choice in that moment, and I didn't always make the right choice, but I learned the lesson. So if someone takes a cheap shot against me and I'm really upset, my choice in that moment is to act out and do what feels good in the moment, which is hit that guy back. And in the process, I'm likely to get a penalty, because it's, it can be very common for the referee to not see the initial instigating cheap shot, but actually to turn around and see my retaliation and give me a penalty. And in that case, my need for short-term gratification to act out on that anger actually harms my team and harms our ability to get to our long-term goal, which is winning that game. So if I can instead take that anger that I feel, take that reaction to the cheap shot and use that as fuel and say, okay, I'm pissed off right now, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to use that as motivation I'm going to stay focused on the scoreboard. I'm going to use that as motivation to dig deeper, to focus harder, to play better, so that we have a better chance of winning the game. Then I've taken that negative thing and I've transmuted it into a positive. And that is the best choice there. So that's another way that I think looking at competition can really be helpful. And if we frame it like that, we can use it as fuel to do better. The next category now of lessons that I want to share are related to leadership. So there's coach-player dynamics, and then there's captains on the team. There's a lot to this. A good coach is a good teacher, a mentor, and a motivator. So teachers, there's different styles of teaching that land with different people. There can be lectures and different things like that, but there's also ways for teachers to get their students more engaged and to learn by doing, and to have ways of teaching where it's going to stick and get the students more involved, so they're more likely to learn. And then there's also this notion of leading by example that I think is so important. And there's a really interesting body of neuroscience on why leadership is so important. And it has to do with mirror neurons. It has to do with how people look to their leader and actually try to be like their leader. So if you have a team captain who works hard during every drill in practice, who's at the rink early to warm up, who stays late to study film or work on other skills or work in the weight room, that inspires other members of the team to do the same sort of thing. If you have a captain who's lazy, who complains, that sets the tone for other players on the team to do the same thing. So leading by example is such a big, important element of leadership. And it has to do with neuroscience. So, if a coach isn't going to be necessarily playing and doing the drills with guys, but coaches can find other ways of leading by example. Coach Wooden, was there, had meticulous preparation, paid attention to detail, was always engaged, 100% engaged and focused during practice. So he gave his best as a coach, leading by example and inspiring his players to give their best. There also is this notion of the transference of belief, where, if coaches or leaders believed in me, that actually inspired me to do more, whether it be to work harder when I was really tired at the end of practice, or to try new things that I didn't think I'd be able to do, or just to, keep going when I wanted to quit, right? All these different things. So I use the same thing now, a version of that in the business world. It could be hiring a coach, or having other supportive people in my life, or it could be listening to books by John Wooden, or these Stoic books by Ryan Holiday, or audios from Tony Robbins, or different things like that can help give that sort of transference of belief and help you increase your sense of conviction that whatever it is you're going through, you're going to get through it, and that you can reach your goals. There's another example of leadership in sports that I really like. So there's a fabulous book called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And he talks about the example of Greg Popovich, who has been the longtime coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And there's this interesting statistic where, coaches, based on the talent of their players, coaches are going to be expected to win a certain number of games. And it's pretty linear. The better the players, the more games they tend to win. the less skilled and accomplished the players, the fewer games they tend to win. And there's this really interesting statistical relationship. But there's one huge outlier who won way more games than he should have, given the quality of his players. And that's Greg Popovich, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And so in this book, Daniel Coyle talks about this amazing combination that Greg Popovich had with his players, where he would develop personal relationships with them. When they were going to draft Tim Duncan, number 1 overall in the draft, he went to Tim Duncan's home in it was one of these islands in the Caribbean where he grew up, and he spent several days with him, and they barely talked basketball. He got to know him as a person. He invested time and effort in establishing relationships with his players. And then when it came time to do things in practice to get on the basketball court, he had developed such trust and rapport with them that he could call them out. So he had extreme trust and love. And then he also had extreme accountability. And he had that, there's this notion of having this golden ratio of 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 positive to negative interactions. When you have that, the negative, the accountability, when you have to make constructive criticism, it comes across so much more positively, it's more well received, and it's a lot more likely to lead to the positive changes that you're seeking as the giver of constructive criticism. And then the final topic I want to touch on is the importance of practice and preparation. John Wooden talked about making each day your masterpiece. So for him, one thing that meant was preparing meticulously for every single minute of practice, every drill. There was these themes throughout practice. They'd have progressions. Every minute was maximized. And he talked about, the compound effect of every practice, how that led to his team developing better and better habits and becoming better conditioned and more skillful and working better communication among the team on the court, all these different things. That's the same for looking at the compound effects of your meals, your workouts, your sleep, your time spent reading versus scrolling Instagram or consuming news and other media, right? It's every piece of content that you put out in your marketing. If it takes 7 touches on average to convert a customer, or between 5 and 10, if you make each one good, you're more likely to convert that. Every session that you do with a patient, that could be someone who, is your next biggest referral source. If you can give them a home run, wonderful, amazing experience, right? So really, again, always doing your best. It kind of comes full circle to our definition of success. But specifically here in terms of practice preparation, I love this quote that we don't rise to the level of our dreams, we fall to the level of our preparation. So when we're under pressure, especially in sports, we don't just play as good as we wish, we play as good as we've practiced, right? We revert to whatever is most automatic, to our default reflexive level of performance. And so, for me in hockey especially, it's so fast, you can't really think through it. You got to be able to react. And so I think of examples like Steph Curry, the basketball player, shoots hundreds of 3-pointers every day from all sorts of different positions, off the dribble, receiving a pass, from different distance, super far distances, different body positions, right? So he shoots all these. So it becomes automatic when he gets there into a game. And one way that this landed for me recently is I just gave a 10-minute talk at a mastermind group called Genius Network. And the idea is that you have to really prepare, because if you only have 10 minutes, you have to condense your thoughts, give your biggest idea or biggest ideas in that time, and really make it land for people. It's sort of like a TED Talk sort of style. And, for me, I was nervous about it. And I went back to these, principles that I learned in sports about practice and preparation and getting a coach. I actually worked with, there's a guy in the group there that I would like to have on this podcast, actually, to talk about the power of speaking and ways to speak more effectively, because I think you can use it in your businesses respectively, right? To attract new patients, clients, et cetera. But, I'm proud to say that the talk went very well. And the reason for that is that I got coaching on how to make it better. And I practiced. I went through this 10-minute talk. I probably went through it, 14 to 15 times. And each time I first 10 or so, I did it a little differently. And then I finally got the last few times, I got to the point where I just did it the same each time. And I said, okay, I got this now, because I knew I wasn't going to rise to some level of how I imagined I could do. I knew when I was up there on stage in front of people, I was going to revert to doing it the way that I had practiced. So I wanted to make sure that was dialed in and really, really good. And then finally, in terms of preparation, this notion of the performance pyramid is so important. We talk about athletes who want to work on their skills. If they don't have the foundational mobility and energy system capacity and strength and speed, working on skills is going to be limited because they might get injured. They're not going to perform as well. And it's the same sort of thing in business. You want to make sure that you have, your basic skills. If you're a clinician, you want to make sure you can be a good clinician, right? And then you want to make sure then you can, start selling those. Then you can start marketing that and generating leads and stuff like that. But there's some basics you have to get right first. You have to learn processes, perhaps, before you can hand them off. Or, at some point in your business, you can hire the who, not how. So it depends on the stages of your business. Focus more on bringing the right people in who already have the knowledge and the experience. But there's processes to growing, and it's a matter of doing what's appropriate, doing the next right thing, not skipping steps. So that was the last category there. I hope generally that these are helpful lessons to you. We talked about the definition of success. We talked about overcoming adversity, the power of teamwork. We talked about how to approach competition, especially if you feel threatened or attacked, really how to turn that into a positive. We talked about leadership, and then we talked about the importance of practice and preparation. And I really hope that these, one or more of these topics really land with you and give you a framework that you can use in your own mind to help you through difficult circumstances and to help you be more successful. If any of these lessons really landed with you, I would love to hear which one resonated the most and which one or ones you may have applied or plan to apply in your business and life. So please comment on Instagram, on YouTube. We'd love to interact with you there. And if you have any of your own stories of experiences you've had and how those lessons have helped you, I'd love to hear those as well. And also, I'll let you know to be on the lookout for the next episode where we're going to have a guest on who is a PhD psychologist who has done both sports psychology and executive coaching. And this will be a little bit of a 2-part mini series here, because we're going to talk with her about related topics, about how to apply lessons from sports and use techniques from sports psychology to help get the most out of ourselves as business people. So I'm really excited to share that one with you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Please like the show, subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you see your podcasts. And we will see you on the next episode of the NeuFit Undercurrent podcast.